All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Energy Transition and Sustainability Series Part 2. This is the second edition of our webinar series, and we are super, super excited to have you join us. If this is your first time, we say welcome and thank you for taking our time to join us. If you're joining for the second time, we say welcome back. I guess we can just start by letting me know in the comments your name and where you're joining from. So it is really, really nice to meet you all. My name is Boluwat Fenishola Jamirie, and I currently handle product development at Chemotronix. And I'll just give you a quick intro what our company Chemotronix is about in case you're hearing about us for the first time. Chemotronix is a clean technology company committed to accelerating Africa's transition to a net zero energy resilient future. We pioneer solutions that combine clean technologies, decentralized energy systems, and inclusive climate strategies, especially for undeserved communities. Our work is grounded in sustainability, innovation, and equity. So this energy transition and sustainability series is basically our way to join and lead conversations on the energy landscape, possible ways to encourage clean technology solutions across the world. And this is a series where we bring industry leaders to have much needed conversations. So our first webinar was on understanding the world of carbon markets, which was a very intensive one where we analyzed the strategies and the energy landscape of North America, Europe, and Africa. If you'd like to know more about this, you can check out the recorded version on our YouTube channel, which is just plainly Chemotronix, or you can also visit our website, which is www.chemotronix.org. All right. So today, which is our second webinar, we'll be talking about the topic is basically from data to action, how digital tools are accelerating a net zero future. And when I say we have a very, very interesting lineup, believe me, which is super, super exciting. All right. So I would go ahead to introduce. I'll just give you a rundown. I'll be going ahead to introduce the piece below, who is going to be taking our welcome edge first. Right. So yes, so basically, Peace Bello is a distinguished leader and innovator, widely recognized for his contributions to clean energy and environmental sustainability. Graduating as the best student in chemical engineering from Obafemi Awolowo University, Peace's academic excellence has been acknowledged by prestigious organizations such as CHEG and the Varkey Foundation, which named him an environmental change maker of the Global Student Prize. Throughout his career, Peace has been invited to high-level forums at renowned institutions, including the United Nations headquarters, the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, AICHE, Leadership Gathering, Amazon Web Services reInvent, the MIT Climate and Energy Prize, the UNDP Rome Center Youth for Climate, among others. That's a lot. But his work continues to inspire thousands of people globally, passionate about advancing clean energy passionate about advancing clean energy technologies. Peace co-founded Chemotronix Limited, a company dedicated to developing the carbon market in Africa. His visionary leadership has earned him the AICHE Product Award for Rising Chemical Engineers. Peace is committed to achieving a sustainable future and believes in the possibility of a just energy transition by 2030. So I'll be handing over the mic to this amazing man who has done a lot in this space and is, still pushing for much more. Hi, Peace. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bolu. I mean, when you say I've done a lot, I don't think so. Probably I'm just starting out. We have a lot of mentors here who we are still looking up to, right? But thank you so much for the introduction. And just like Abu rightly said, we have a very high level lineup today, which we'll be introducing shortly. Yes, there's just a lot for us to unpack today. And thanks so much for joining. Wherever you're joining from, we are so glad to have you here with us. And we are just Stay relaxed, and we hope you can maximize your stay here. All right. So welcome everyone, and I know we are talking about from data to action, how digital tools accelerating a net zero future. Now you see on my screen, I'm very sure you're familiar with these companies from AMD to IBM, uh, from HP, right? These are leading tech companies, and we can see the massive innovation being done over there, especially in North America and Europe, to ensure that we have a sustainable future. And this is just to make us understand that the digital future we've all been waiting for is here, and we've
Yeah.
got to maximize the future at hand, right? So quickly, from data to action, how digital
Yeah.
tools are accelerating in a zero future,
So,
right? So
uh, so
one thing
yeah.
we must understand is that the net zero transition requires speed,
Yo,
precision, and scalability.
yo,
And that's like very, very important.
yo,
We have to ensure that we must do it in the right way possible. And data is very, very important. Data is very, very important. And digital tools means a smarter energy usage, lower emissions, and faster innovation. Right. So these are just very important things we have to bear in mind, even as we navigate the future we want to create. And yeah, I mean, speaking further, just studying one of the use case globally, or is the United States DOE El Captain project. I don't work on this, but it's something I read about, and I was really fascinated about it and trying to see how nuclear energy is being combined for high scalability of climate simulation and the likes with the US DOE. I think this is something that the leading countries are looking into. And here in Africa, we cannot just wait behind. Also in the Middle East, just recently we saw the massive news about the data center boom from Saudi Arabia to Qatar, right? So we can see a lot of momentum going on there. And it just shows that investments are growing up rapidly in the digital ecosystem. And yeah, one other thing we have to look at is that this opens new pathways for green tech, solar, cooling, and the likes, and also can diversify our economies and make it much more sustainable, right? So definitely the future we've been waiting for is here, and Africa seems to be lagging behind. And what can we do? As a company based in Africa, I believe one of the things we can do is that we have to identify the barriers and find a way to solve it, right? And one of the things that I feel we have to look into is our power grid system, because one of the areas where we can leverage digital tools is in our transmission and distribution system of energy. And this boils down to how we fragment our data, how we identify them. And the opportunities I see for us there, particularly IoT for solar systems and also digital mini grid payments. It seems to be a whole lot now, but I feel gradually we are getting there. And that's why we have Chemotronix. We believe we can find an intersection between digitalization and sustainability, right? It's something that is on our burning front. And we believe we can harness the power of clean tech and digitalization for a carbon-free Africa. One of the things we are trying to do at Chemotronix is that we have a project for TISO, and it's trying to integrate agrivoltaics with smart monitoring systems, and also plans to install digital monitoring devices to help track emissions on this project. So this is just a brief highlight of the project. It's still undergoing our development, not yet started, but I will share it with some key stakeholders who are trying to help us make it move forward, right? So you can reach out to us for more details on this. It's registered with the ACMI, and we look forward to working with you on this, right? So finally, before I hand over to our speaker today, one of that thing we have to take note is that our digital tools can play a very crucial role in helping our carbon markets, right? Our carbon markets are something that have been facing issues of trust in recent years. But when we have secured systems, we can help to unlock more tools for climate financing and also have better documentation to ensure we can monitor our progress and where we are currently sitting in terms of emission profile of nations, right? So the way forward, we need more policies, we need more financing, we need more partnerships, and then definitely we need trust because we want to have very secure systems whereby we don't have data breaches or cybersecurity breaches, and we hope that we can achieve that as next time possible. So I'll stop here for now. Another about to Bolu so that we can have our speakers give a more uh, deeper insight, a much more deeper insight into what we'll be learning about today. Thank you very much. Welcome, and I hope you can maximize your time here today. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Peace. That was really, really good. Um, okay. So thank you. We'll be going on to the panel session for in a bit, but I'm thinking, Victor, should we run some polls now?
All
Hi,
right,
Victor.
I'm
Can you
happy
hear
to
me?
do
All
that.
right.
I will run. Okay, so the polls should be live. Just confirming if you can see the polls. I'm also going to stop sharing my screen. I can see the slides auto moving. So let me know if you can see the polls. So just participate in the polls, and I'll stop the polls really soon. Okay, I see a mix of answers here. I'm going to end the poll in some minutes and launch another one. So that because like this shows like the diversity of how even the audience we have right now is. Okay, so I'm going to end this poll now. If you still want your answers in, so please participate. I will close it in about 30 seconds. Okay. And I've just ended the poll now, and I'll share the results so you can also see what the answers look like in terms of being concerned about climate change. I know that there's still a mix in the audience. Some are still thinking about if climate change is the greatest concern right now. Some are very concerned, of course. I'm glad there's no one on the call who's not concerned about the effects of climate change, and that we all show some sort of concern in certain ways as well. And I can also see the diversity in terms of the second question poll, which is really interesting. So the biggest environmental issue that you're personally worried about. I myself still have, a tendency to dabble between several issues, from plastic waste to, deforestation. But I see a lot of more folks are tending towards, plastic waste and global warming, which is really amazing. Okay, and I think everyone is on the same page in terms of, individuals making a significant impact on climate change, which of course is really important, as action points for everyone on the call as well, and even all around the world too. Being as an individual, you can also make difference in the climate change space. So whether it's from planting of trees to engaging in climate related activities, you can actually make a difference. And even it could be as small as joining a climate related you know NGO, or a climate sustainability habit as well, also contributes to advancing prevention of climate effects. Okay, awesome, awesome. I think this is really interesting. I will also launch another poll soon. Uh, just before we get started on we continue the next bits of the session. Okay, and this will in a bit test uh, your climate knowledge so that you have a sense of uh, the audience climate knowledge. Okay, so I'm just going to, all right, there's still other folks joining, so I will admit them. But then you should be able to see the poll whether you are joining now or not. So there's another poll that is up there, and of course, I want to see, I want to see how our climate change knowledge is on the call. So yeah, do want to participate in the poll. And of course, yes, please feel free to pick your most preferred. Yeah, if you agree or disagree. Really amazing answers there. Okay, okay. I can actually see the results now, but I'll publish in a bit. So you just do well to turn in your contributions to the poll there. Okay, the poll still keeps increasing, and and that's why I've not decided if I should end it. But yeah, hopefully I'll end it in about 30 seconds now. Just giving some more people the chance to turn. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll right now so that I don't take much of your time anymore. And I'll just share the results for those who would like to see it. So the first one is which, renewable energy source do you think holds the most promise for the future? And I see there's an outlier in terms of geothermal there. So someone thinking towards but that perspective. In truth, I would say it's more of a preference and how you actually envision the future. Uh, but then I see a lot of people tend towards the solar bit as well. So solar, wind, hydropower, or geothermal. And I think it's actually much more dependent on where you are in the part of the world as well. And that may have, of course, have influenced some of your preferences. But it's good overall to see we have people thinking towards other sources. The second one, what do you think is the most effective way to reduce emissions? And I see it's almost a tie here. Looking at the results right now, some folks are, tending towards using renewable energy sources, such as the ones that have been mentioned earlier, solar, wind, geothermal, and the likes. And other folks are tending towards more of a more of a political landscape, which is supporting green policies, which of course I'm definitely a very strong advocate of as well. Okay, but again, as I mentioned, to be fair, it's more of the way you view, you view things, and depending on the location you are in. And I see everyone agrees fully on the third bit, which the question says, do you think climate change affects weather patterns in your area? And of course, yes, for folks who experience, extreme weather events, that's some of the effects of climate change. And for those who have not noticed that, that's also fine as well. But I can see a lot more people tend towards the first option, which is, being affected by weather patterns. And I hope, after this session, you'll go on to, take actions to further reduce climate change. But yeah, thank you so much for participating in the polls once again. I will stop sharing and hand back soon to Bolu to continue.
All right, thank you very much, Victor, for that very exciting poll session. And thank you to all who participated. So, right now, we'll be heading straight into the panel session where we have Peace as the moderator. And I'll be introducing one of our speakers today. So, we have Ignacy, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Refinity, and Ignacy is a leader in technology development and commercialization with over 25 years of experience in process development and scale up and technology economic and sustainable assessment of new technologies in the chemicals and falls industries. Prior to joining Refinity as CTO in 2025, Ignacy was the executive director and CTO of the Rapid Manufacturing Institute, where he led the institute's successful funding renewal with a new focus on process technologies for sustainability and circularity in the process industries. Ignacy also teaches at the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago as an adjunct professor. He has a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Wisconsin, Madison, and an engineer's degree from the Università Polytechnic de Catalunya. Ignacy, you have to help me on this one, right? Barcelona Tech, and Ignacy is a fellow of the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. So I will pass the mic to Peace right now, but it's super, super exciting to have you on board, Ignacy. Over to you, Peace.
Ignacy will be going now. Thank you, Ignacy, for joining us. I met Ignacy last year in San Diego, and really amazing person. While in university, I took a lot of rapid courses, and I'm very sure Ignacy was one of those who must have prepared some of those materials I encountered. And since that time, Ignacy has actually been a very, very good source of motivation to me. And yeah, we are so happy to have you here today join us. And before the panel session, Ignacy will have some presentation on the digital energy landscape in North America. Right. So, Ignacy, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the kind presentations, both of you. Appreciate it. So I will share a few slides that put together. Here we go. All right, so hopefully you can see my title slide now. Yep, looks like it.
Yes.
It's going to be a handful, and literally a handful, because there's, I think, 5 slides, just presenting some of the ideas or some thoughts around digital energy, especially a bit of a biased view from North America, and more specifically from the U.S., where I am. I have to say that, and I wanted to make sure that all that I'm going to present are my own personal or professional personal opinions, and should not be taking to reflect any or either of my employers or any others. So this is purely my own considerations. So to start, anybody that follows the news, is particularly about the U.S., see that this year, particularly following the late 2024 year election, there is a quite a changing perspective and quite a lot of changes in energy policy and energy perspective from the U.S. particularly, and because of the economic and political part of the U.S. affecting the rest of the world. So I think it's important to recognize and to see that, but also not to overreact, and try to understand really where the changes are, where some of the things that remain similar, and to the extent, right? So I put some thoughts together on kind of the change of this changing perspective, because we still don't have very good ideas about the current administration, a full picture of what the current administration does. So I would say the previous administration, Biden administration, the focus largely was on decarbonization as a big idea, and they had put a lot of material out, and there was a strategy based on that. I put some dates here. Everybody, every country, every region has dates. That the previous Biden administration was seeing 2035 as a key date for electrical grid decarbonization, leading to a 2050 industrial decarbonization. Those, it's important to see that those were target dates and not really hardcore commitments. You know, there is a degree of skepticism, particularly at 2035, given how long it takes for any of those commitments to become realities, right? Is it realistically to expect big 2035 changes if we are not seeing the investment on the ground right now? Questions. What we know, what was clear, there was a directional strategy with some intermediate points and a very clear commitment to decarbonization. That is lowering carbon GHG emissions of the core sources: energy production, energy generation, industrial use, and industrial generation of emissions. This perspective or this idea, and this was largely done through the Department of Energy, gave rise to a number of very high-level programs or very targeted but long-range targeted under the generic label of Earthshots. And for those of you that have seen, why do they use that? It was mimicking the old moonshot. Moonshot is what the U.S. did back in the 60s under President Kennedy, about going to the moon, and that was the moonshot. So trying to think about it in that way, finding these a long-range focusing objectives, but it's about the Earth, it's about climate change, it's about and moonshots is where that was, and there were a number of them. I put a few here, and sorry for the repeating. There was a big one on hydrogen that still there, and we'll see what happens. Electrification and use of renewables was a big one. And you can probably, you cannot see what's there anymore. You probably can do and find some of the old by this point reports. But I want to emphasize that these shots or these very long-range ideas were both in energy generation and energy use, and I'll tie in the digital part a bit in a little bit. What I would say is that in general, the previous administration, the Biden administration, had a very expansive but not necessarily fully internally coherent strategy on the energy and energy transition. Okay, so wanting to do a lot of things, but with not a very, in my view, again, very well-defined connection between the different Earth shots and how does these interact the other and that type of stuff, right? It was a very hopeful, very forward-looking. Compare that to the current administration, the Trump administration. Obviously, this is sometimes it's hard to realize that it's only been a few months and everything's changed, but in unclear ways yet. What is pretty clear is that the focus is not on decarbonization, is on energy expansion. So the focus is on more energy rather than, I would say, decarbonized energy. So it's a different focus. It's not a not do anything, but it's a different focus. Using some of the language of the current administration, if you see some of the press releases, they talk about unleashing American energy. So it's very American focused, America first, and that kind of stuff. But there is a world component is reflecting, and you see Secretary Wright always brings up the world energy demand is increasing, so we cannot afford not growing the energy production, the energy generation. So there's something there. For those of us concerned on sustainability, we have to admit that, yes, we have to be very careful and not increase emissions and to be careful, but that there is a demand of energy. And if we don't address it, that demand will be filled or will be fulfilled, but not necessarily very good ways. So important to realize that there are some points in there. There's, I would say, a still in development, not very clear strategic focus. There is some points that we are seeing some clear focus. I say the nuclear, the renewed focus on nuclear, which by the way started very much in the Biden administration and is very expansive now in the current administration, is very clear, and I think that has some real tight connections to digital energy, and I'll elaborate on those a little bit. There is a renewed push, and I'm not sure if it's a real rather or a headline or a political push back for fossil, whether it be renewed fracking. The coal, I think, is just an unrealistic one, but clearly on LNG, liquefied natural gas, and expanding natural gas export for the U.S., it's clearly there. What's happening in renewables? It's very hard to know. Renewables, and particularly the more mature sources of renewables, solar, wind, are still there, and even with a potentially lowering the support, the federal support for those are entrenched enough, and they're really the lowest cost generation of electricity right now in the U.S. So they're not going anywhere. They're transitioning to very much the commercial. But what is happening to the hydrogen initiatives? What's happening to the focus on electrification? TBD. Nobody really knows. I don't think even the folks in the administration really know yet. So I would say patient look and see what happens. My next look is on the digital energy, right? I mean, that was more that the energy landscape at a very high level, strategy, industrial strategy, and politics. So when I look at digital energy, and I like to frame things from the high level and then see what the consequences at the pragmatic level are, I see both challenges and opportunities. So I'm going to start with the challenges. I'm going to end with the opportunities. So digital energy, to me, there's challenges in the way that all the digital initiatives bring with them a large increase in energy demand for the assets needed for this digital transformation. Data centers is the main one that we always hear. Data centers, but also AI. Obviously, the energy consumption is very large and unclear how we're going to address, right? So there's a challenge here. There's also a challenge not just with the amount of energy, but the further imbalance between the demand of that energy and the generation capacity. So when is that energy demand and when is that energy generated? Sometimes, we talk about the duck curve in which the timeliness of the generation and demand changes. But I would say with the large digital assets, it becomes less, the time dependency is less clear. So that repeatability of the duck curve that, morning, night, midday is relatively predictable becomes less so. So it puts a further stress. It's not just amount, it's when that amount happens and how quickly that changes. And I would say there is a further challenge for me, which is something that I've been thinking for years, which a detangling between data, information, and knowledge, right? So digital creates a lot of data, creates a lot of knowledge. It's easier to put more sensors and to collect more points out of the sensors, but how do we create knowledge out of it? And that's something that is not so clear. I see a lot of the AI trying to do that, trying to create knowledge, but is it really knowledge or is it just some high-level inferences from the data without assuming quality or understanding the context of the data well enough? So that's a challenge, right? What are the opportunities? Well, there's some of the opportunities, and I think that's very related to the work that Chemotronix and you guys are doing, which is finding some of these, the ability to come up with new operational frameworks, distributed, autonomous, combining things that otherwise, without the digital backbone, would have been very difficult to work in a coherent operational way. In the US, the Department of Energy has talked quite a bit about virtual power plants, which sounds a bit funny, but it really is the operating distributed power generation assets as a coherent power plant, but it's a virtual one, right? There is a bit of solar here, a bit of wind there, even a household generated, but doing it in a virtual, coherent way. So I think that's very important. There is also, and you guys talk a lot about this as well, using this digital backbone and digital tools as a real-time tracking, I would even dare say control of these distributed capacity, both for operations, which is the traditional realm of control and real-time tracking, but also on the business realm, right? It's not just being able to track and control that things are going well and that nothing goes, but also being able to, in real time, create business transactions, create buying and selling operations, setting costs and transactional prices in real time. And that's a real opportunity because it allows us to bring in both technical control and also a commercial ability to deal with this time imbalance that we saw before between generation and demand. And what I would say later, and I think that's an important point as well, is that this connects very much with initiatives around digital manufacturing, and particularly around the ability in some organisms that are doing that, in some organizations that are helping in the democratization of this digital manufacturing. By that, I mean the ability of small small manufacturing enterprises, the small companies worldwide to access the capability of digital manufacturing. So, for example, in the US, we have another institute, one of the sibling institutes to the Rapid Institute that I was leading, called MXD, that deals with digital manufacturing. They have a big focus on small and medium enterprises having access to digital manufacturing techniques and capabilities. And I think that's very much something that can be extended worldwide. That digital allows a lot more people to access capabilities than otherwise would be restricted to large companies, presumably only in highly developed spaces. If we move to now what we were talking, or we can talk about energy transition, and what is energy transition, what is decarbonization, what is net zero. To me, those are different labels, and I've been talking about that point for a number of years. And I prefer not to be too hang up on the different labels. So these different labels are largely, I would say, politically influenced. They have slightly different meaning, but it all means moving towards a decarbonization and addressing of the causes of global warming in different ways. If by using a label we don't like as well, we do better things, I'm all for it. It really is about doing good things. It's not so much about fighting over what label we're going to use. That pragmatism, I think, is quite important. Another reflection, and I bet before that in the U.S. particularly, the federal support for a lot of energy transition or decarbonization efforts is largely suspended, is the word that I put in. I don't think it's reasonable to say cancel, because things come and go and administrations come and go as well. So it's paused, it's suspended. But you have to understand that particularly in a system like in the U.S., states, and in this case, particularly some states, you've seen California doing very different things that the federal government is doing in industry. And industry has been largely, and is largely still very much standing behind their commitments to the energy transition, to the net zero, and the strong support. Are there enough dollars behind their strong words? Never, right? They always need to put more. We always want more to do it. But it's important to see that there is not one level of support, that there is a different levels. And I think there's going to be showing that some of the states, and particularly the more forward-looking, bigger states, California, New York, and even my own state of Illinois are putting a lot of money and effort behind their initiatives. And industry, and I would say some of the bad industry, and I don't believe it's bad, it's very strongly. You see companies, even some companies like ExxonMobil that has been demonized time and time again, they're standing very strongly behind their decarbonization and net zero commitments. Now all the oil and gas companies largely are doing that, the chemicals. So I believe the industry is really keeping their commitments even in the current time. The way I see it is a bit of a pendulum swing, right? At some point, we can be seen as being obsessive about the energy transition. At some point, there is a bit of a push to, ignore it, it'll go away. And we know that it's not realistic to either obsess, because obsession is not necessarily what helps us work, is a focus, to being more of a realistically addressing those problems and making it happen. Sometimes, don't be dismayed with the pendulum swings against the direction you feel more comfortable, but also don't be complacent when it's in the direction you want, and moderate and do that. And there's really a large role for digital in here. Again, operational enabling, I talked about that, tracking, which is to help us to enforce those commitments. Governments and companies have commitments, but we want to make sure that things done and with a commitment, done and with a headline, and become reality. And those digital tools is where we can use those to also track that those commitments are there. Let me, have some a couple of 30 seconds, 2 minutes on nuclear, since particularly from the U.S. there is this renewed focus on nuclear as as an energy generating panacea, if you will. What what is good and what is bad about it? Obviously it's a reliable base load, energy base load, power base load, and it's a very large source of decarbonized energy. So it's something we know how to do, can be done at scale, or it needs to be done at scale, I would say, and it's decarbonized. But it's expensive, it's slow to build, and it has low flexibility, right? So it's not all good, but there is a lot of good with it. I'm not going into the safety, into the security, into those aspects, because those are a bit of a break into jail type of issues. I think it's important to realize that there's also new approaches and a small modular reactors. So the downscaling, the scaling down of nuclear, it's important. The U.S. sees itself as the leader in it. Part of it is because we have all the experience of or a lot of experience in the military side of smaller nuclear reactors. At the end of the day, a nuclear submarine has a small nuclear reactor inside. So obviously different constraints of using those for civilian purposes. But the ability to do that and to create that technology there is always the fusion, right? Fusion will be the future. There has been some real advances. Some of us are believers. The timeline, TBD. It's been the next, 20 years for the last 50 years. So we'll see what that happens. A very interesting thing on nuclear is the possibility and the developments in tightly connection to specific assets, particularly in our case, in our discussion, to digital assets, to data centers. So you've seen commitments, or you've seen initiatives from the likes of Microsoft and Amazon and Google about building some nuclear assets, whether it be small nuclear reactors or larger ones, connected to future digital assets. And that's a very interesting proposition, right? So it's about creating new data centers without affecting the current energy and creating them with their own decarbonized capability. Realistic, we'll see. Very worth investigating. But I would say it doesn't stop at digital. There's also ideas and plans behind tying new nuclear developments, particularly small nuclear reactors, SMRs, to other industries. Dow Chemical has a very interesting initiative about doing that in one of their petrochemical assets in Texas, in which the vision is to have a small nuclear reactor, small modular reactor from X Energy as a decarbonized steam generator. So they're going forward. They're putting their money. They see that as an important point. So I'm going to end with a couple of thoughts, and those are both in the digital and in the physical assets. I think it's important to keep and increase that tight connection. Sometimes there is a tendency, and I would say that the folks on the digital, in my background, is on the software side as well. So I blame myself as much as others of moving the digital world and thoughts without thinking that we need to be connected and remain connected to the physical assets. To me, that's a bit of an expansion of the digital twin concept, right? That there has to be the data that there cannot be a digital without supporting the physical asset, because at the end of the day, energy is generated and it's consumed mostly through this physical asset. And by the way, a data center is a physical asset for a digital production. On data, it's not just data amount, it's quality, it's reliability, it's accessibility, it's transparency of the data. So the quality and all these other characteristics things and many other adjectives we could have here are part of that. It's also it's important to think of the digital in service of energy, both generation, use, efficiency. It's not its own purpose, it's in service of the other uses and generation of energy. And I think it's particularly important to be very pragmatic, right? And it is a very politicized world, and in the country that I live in, even more than others, but it's politicize everywhere, but pragmatism. We need to do good things with whatever environment we have to do. We have to have a very pragmatic generation. Doing better is always better than doing nothing, even if it's just a little bit better. So I'll end here. I want to thank all of you. Here's my email for anybody that wants to reach out and connect. As Peace knows, I like to talk. I like to connect with you guys. I like to connect with the new generation of energy and engineers, and to appreciate this to all of you.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you, Ignacy. I mean, you've said a whole lot. I have a number of questions, so I think I'll just keep my questions till the panel session. Radhika is here, but thank you, Radhika, for joining us. I'm very sure that also have questions in the chats, all right? So please drop your questions. We'll pick them up during the panel session. Uh, Thanks so much, Ignacy, for that session. I think the major highlight for me there was, I mean, bringing in nuclear towards the end. I know even the DOE's projects, the L Captain work with HP and AMD was on nuclear energy sort of thing, right? I know that nuclear is a very big issue now, and people have been calling, why should some countries have nuclear and why should others not have nuclear? You know, that's like a serious bit of contention, right? So that's for political discussion. All right, so I think thanks so much for staying with us. We'll just go straight to Radhika. Then after that, probably we'll have judging from Sniger. Hopefully he joins by then. Then we'll go to a panel session. All right, so I think Bolu, you can do the introduction before we move over to Radhika. Uh,
All right, thank you very much, Peace. Um, okay, so that was a very, very interesting session taken by Ignacy, and we'll be moving on to our next speaker, who is Radhika, and she's a founding partner at StarChain Ventures. Radhika is an AI and Web3 venture operator and advisor, a top 100 woman of the future 2022, TEDx speaker, Silicon Valley woman of influence, and SV serial entrepreneur. She's a founding partner at StarChain Ventures, a Silicon Valley-based venture studio solving significant global challenges with advanced technology, a core thesis of our best-selling book, Enterprise Blockchain Has Arrived, co-authored by Jordan Woods. With over a decade of experience strategically advising startups, Radhika has enabled top startups to raise over $900 million to achieve successful exits, that's IPO or acquisition by brands, and become unicorns, generating $4 billion plus in shareholder value. That is very huge. So Radhika has also works at the intersection of technology and policy to develop impactful frameworks. Radhika is a board member at industry organizations such as Partners in Digital Health Institute, PhD Inst, and Blockchain in Healthcare Today, VHTY. Radhika has an MBA from Chapman University, AB from Bryn Mawr University College, and is a certified network engineer. So we're super, super excited to have you, Radhika.
Thank you
I'll
so
pass
much.
the word.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. Great to be here with you. Peace, thanks for the invitation to join you today as well. Yeah, happy to be here. And I wanted to also mention that, you know, a lot of these really exciting topics in the energy sector are things we wrote about in our books. I'll probably share a little bit more about those views on the panel with Ignacy and Jürgen. But I wanted to share with you my presentation today on fundraising insights. So I won't get into my background since I was introduced so beautifully by you. It's just a great pleasure to be here with all of you and to share some of my thoughts. And since I work in the venture space, I thought it would be a very good opportunity to share some of the insights. Some of these insights are going to be familiar to you since you've taken our course on Insider's Guide to Fundraising. But I'll take that away. So a lot of the thoughts that I'm going to be sharing later on the panel are based on our book. Along with my colleague, Jordan Woods, we co-authored a book called Enterprise Blockchain Has Arrived, which really is all about Web3 And it is about digital infrastructures that can be completely transformed using blockchain technology as a core. We do discuss how this technology combined with AI, IoT, really it's the convergence of advanced technologies to give us greater agency and control over data. Ignacy, you mentioned some very interesting points about data and how important it is to preserve that integrity around data. So this is something we're passionate about as well. So it's great to see your interest in that arena. So what I'd like to share is really the whole process of fundraising. I mean, people, it's a bit of a science and it's a bit of an art, but the science part is very, very strategic. And so if you think about doing anything, you really want to approach it from a strategic consideration. This is not about going out to everybody and saying, oh, you know, something will stick. So really the whole purpose behind doing things strategically is to minimize bumps along the road. So, you know, what investors look for essentially is a high growth space. You don't want to make investments in an area that's declining or stagnating. So the first thing that an investor will think about is, are you in a high growth space? And the good news is for everyone involved in the energy sector, it is a high growth space. It is something that is really necessary for the planet. And so there is going to be a heightened interest for, especially with investors who are investing in areas such as sustainability and climate. This is going to be a great area of interest. In general, what you want to think about as an entrepreneur is setting your growth targets at, let's say, 100 million over 5 years. That might seem like a very, very large number, but really the idea is that as an entrepreneur, you're thinking about how to deploy a technology solution out there that is going to generate tremendous revenue growth very rapidly. So this is not about something that's going to take a long time to build. There are some infrastructure kinds of projects that might take longer than that. But typically, when you think about, especially in the world of software, things can be deployed. And these days, with the advent of AI, the time to market, the time to release projects is that much made more efficiently. And therefore, we're going to see these timelines shorten and shorten as we move forward. The idea is that, you know, when you are an entrepreneur and you're talking with an investor, keep in mind that you're really selling a piece of your company, right? So this is not about just getting money. The money is an exchange for something. And so the exchange is that you're really giving part of the ownership of your company to investors. So that's something I want you to keep in mind because it's easy to lose sight of that. The next thing is, of course, that everybody's going to be interested, or investors are going to be thinking about product MVPs. An MVP is a minimum viable product. So many of you might have heard that term. And that's really just a basic version of the product that you can actually start implementing out in the marketplace. And the way you can prove how successful you're going to be is usually by way of proving that you have some sense of customer traction or adoption. And typically, even early in the process, you might be able to obtain letters of intent or LOIs. And that's a good evidence or indication that there is demand for what you're building and that there's customer interest in what you're developing. And the last thing that I will say, among other considerations, is investors will look for entrepreneurs that have deep sector expertise or domain expertise. And certainly in the case of the climate area or sustainability, these are very specialized areas, right? And so investors are going to look for the deep domain or sector expertise that the team can bring. Let's see here. So as you might imagine, when you look at the global investment landscape, there's a lot that needs to be done in Africa. It is starting, and that's what's exciting. I personally grew up in North Africa, so part of me is always belongs to Africa, and I think that it presents such an incredible field of opportunity, and it's a large continent, so there's a great deal to be done. But when you look at the investment landscape, really the centers are still in North America. The centers are typically in the US. And a lot of that comes from Silicon Valley, where I happen to be based. And so still, when you look at the venture capital landscape, the large quantity of investment is really only available in Silicon Valley, and that's why many of big companies come here. You're talking just trillions of dollars really available here, certainly billions of dollars. So, what are some of the things that investors look at when you look at early stage companies? We're really looking for exit potential rather than profit sharing. In many parts of the world, this is where the way we do things in North America is a little bit different from other parts of the world. In many parts of the world, investors might look at profit sharing. Typically in the United States, investors are doing this. They are financial professionals. They are specialized in these areas, and they're not really looking for profit sharing. They are looking for exit potential. What do I mean by that? An exit is when a company either goes IPO or has an offering on the public markets. That's the initial public offering. And the other opportunity is to be either merged or acquired with another company. So that's something that I want to keep you apprised of, is what is the exit potential for this company? When you have a venture fund, really you're looking at each company that you're looking and evaluating for investment, as the basic question is this a company that is going to have an exit, and particularly a significant exit, because obviously this is all about making money. You want to think about, as an entrepreneur, how do you maximize the return to general partners and limited partners? So if you think about the structure of an investment firm, the general partners are the people who are running the firm, and then the limited partners are the people that are investing in these funds. And so every general partner is thinking, how do I make money for the limited partner who has invested in my fund? So it's a trickle down in a sense. So for you as an entrepreneur, you need to be thinking about, well, am I providing the kind of return to these investors who also have their investors to provide returns to? So this is really the mindset that I want you to be thinking about. There's a lot of similarities to horse racing in a way, strangely enough. Think about placing bets on something, and really the investor is thinking, is this a company that I can place a bet on? And is this worthy of my investment bet? Because what I'm looking for as an investor is going to be, well, is this company going to have an exit? Is there a potential to make great return on my investment? These are the kinds of questions the investor is thinking about. And what you want to highlight to any investors is what your accomplishments are from a team perspective, because as I mentioned, a lot of that is tied to domain and sector expertise, and certainly in the areas that we're talking about in climate and sustainability, it's a very specialized field, as I mentioned. So you want to demonstrate and showcase what accomplishments the team has, and also the network. And so why is the network important? Again, it is about how fast you can grow. Do you have a network of partners, of potential customers? How quickly will it be achieved in terms of traction in the marketplace? These are the questions that the investor is thinking about. And the real reason for asking any and all of these questions is reducing risk of failure. So as you might imagine, when an investor is going to place a bet in a company or make that investment in a company, they're saying, well, what is the risk of failure here? And we often talk about investor mindsets through this process. And one of the biggest questions that the investor is trying to answer for themselves is, is the risk of the failure so big that it's going to prevent me from thinking about making an investment? So investors are more likely to think about ways to say no rather than ways to say yes. Obviously, if you meet an investor who's very excited in your specialized area, they might be less inclined to say no, because they also are keen to see success in a domain or sector. But typically, investors are risk averse, if you can imagine it, because you would think, well, that's counterintuitive. They're making investments, and therefore they should have open minds in making bets. And They do have open minds in making bets, but it's also about minimizing the risk while you're placing these bets. And how do you do that? How do you demonstrate risk of failure? And these are a reducing risk of failure, that is. And so there's three major elements that you want to be thinking about. One is team, the other is market, and the last is product. In many parts of the world, investors will actually pay more attention to the product and the market than necessarily the team. Here in North America, and particularly in Silicon Valley, we place a greater emphasis on the team because the thinking is that market conditions can change, products can evolve, new technologies come on the horizon. And so a good team, an A+ team, will really be the kind of team that can weather the storms, that can resolve things strategically and dynamically to move through the opportunities and overcome obstacles. And that's really a team play. So we really look at the quality of the team, the ability of the team to leverage their particular domain or sector expertise, and how that will translate to reducing risk of failure, because the risk of failure is very, very high. And so any of these ventures are going to be very high risk, and the investor is looking at how the team is going to de-risk the opportunity. The next is market. As I mentioned to you, investors are looking at high growth spaces. They want markets that are growing at CAGRs, or compound annual growth rates, that are in the double digits. They want to see opportunities that are expanding in a particular sector rather than a stagnating or declining market. And then lastly, product. Are you developing a product competitively that it will hold up to the competition? Are you developing that competitive moat around your product, particularly in terms of technology proofing what you're doing so that it stands the test of time? In conservative times, a lot of these goalposts are going to be moved further out. So they're going to ask you to demonstrate greater customer traction and greater adoption, or evidence of greater customer adoption in your product. And so, these are pretty conservative times at the moment, when we have tremendous geopolitical tensions going on worldwide. A lot of investors want to play a wait and see sort of game and say, well, I'm going to wait and see how this turns out, and not really sure that I'm going to be ready to deploy capital anytime soon. So, in conservative times, you want to be sensitive to the mindset of the investor, who is going to be thinking even more so about the risk of failure. And the last thing is that VCs tend to be very fashion conscious. There are things that are in vogue at times and then out of fashion as well. So particular technologies that are coming at the forefront, AI, for example, is basically absorbing all of the oxygen in the space. In nearly every company we're meeting is AI something or other. And we at Starchain Ventures also look at AI as a foundational technology. We also look at other technologies such as blockchain, for example. And then, of course, there are certain sectors that either come into favor or out of favor. And, for those people, for those investors who are very passionate about climate technology, about sustainability, obviously the areas that you are talking about in this conference are incredibly important for them. So you will want to think about which VCs are going to be more interested in your space than others. How do you attract investor interest? Really, it comes down to having a very well thought out, put together package that includes some key materials. So you want to think about an elevator pitch. So this is a short 60 to 90 pitch. Imagine meeting an investor in an elevator. You don't have that much time. What kinds of information would you want to translate across if that investor says, well, what do you do? What's your company all about? You want to have a well thought out, 60 to 90 second sort of pitch that explains very quickly the area that you're in, your passion for working on this, and what kind of traction or merits do you have attached to this venture. You also want to have something of like an introductory paragraph or two, something that very quickly highlights the essential elements for your company. And again, demonstrates how you're really getting ahead of the curve, how you're developing customer adoption with the product that you have, and of course, your team. what kind of team do you have, and what are the strengths of the team. Really, what you're trying to do through any of these materials, and certainly, of course, the investor presentation itself, is to build credibility around your team, around the market that you're in, and that it is high growth, and also, of course, the product that you're building and the competitive strengths of the product and the differentiation you have for your product with respect to other companies out there in the market. And lastly, what you want to think about is references. References not just for you personally, because obviously character references are incredibly important, but also company references, product references. If you have a product out there and a customer is using it, an investor will be very keen to understand, are these referenceable customers? Is that the type of customer they can easily call and do a reference call with this customer and saying, well, what do you think about the product? What do you think about the team? How easy has it been to work with this team? Do you think that this is the kind of thing that you'll be using for a long time? All of these are questions that the investor is going to be thinking about and wanting to be answered. So having great solid references is something that just builds your credibility out there with the investors. And the final thing that I want to leave you with is the whole presentation that you develop really has to hang together like an interesting story, a compelling story, a memorable story even. So at the end of the day, I mean, investors come across so many different opportunities. And the idea is that you want to differentiate yourself as much as possible from other companies that are out there also wanting mind share from the same investor. So when you have a compelling story that hangs together, that really demonstrates not only your passion for why you're doing this, but how you're doing this and how you're doing it better than anyone else, that's the kind of story that will be compelling and that will be memorable in an investor's mind. And that's, at the end of the day, you want to be memorable in a good way. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I'll stop sharing screen at the moment and leave the door open for a few questions. Peace, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Radhika. Really appreciate your expansive insights, right? Thanks so much for that. Yeah, so I know there are a lot of questions over here, but just to save time, it's almost 3:30 over here. I think we'll just go to the panel session and take the questions when we're wrapping up. All right. So so I think Bolo, we can move on to the panel session now. I'm not sure Georgine will be joining us. So Georgine works with Niger, but it's unfortunately not available at the moment. Was told yesterday, right? But I guess something came up and he could not join today. All right. So I think we can share the screen, Victor, for the panel session. Or do I? Or let me try to share from my end. All right. So I think the first question over here will be for Ignacy. I know Ignacy has quite a lot of experience at the technical end and digital space of energy. All right. So when it comes to development of projects, right? What do you think? Just let me read it as it is here. So this question says, how can we build how can we de-risk investments in digital infrastructure, especially in areas like Africa, where we are just like trying to kickstart things? Based on your experience, what do you think we should be considering when you talk of probably data centers and the likes?
I mean, projects are projects, right? I think projects, concentrating on the specific risks for the project, right? And particularly, I think it's quite important to consider all those risks on things you cannot control, right? I mean, are you depending on infrastructure that somebody else is supposed to develop? You can have the best project plan and project development in the world, but if you're depending on what others are doing, that you don't have any direct power, whether it be through commercial power or reputational power or a way to make him do other things. You might do the best job in the world and still not have a successful outcome because of it. So understanding that risk and mitigation strategies for the risk, and I say mitigation, I don't say avoidance, because the risks are always going to be there, and you need to have ways to do it. But personally, in any project managers probably I will get on my case. I'm a high level planner. I like high level plans instead of super detailed, because I know that for innovation things tend to change very quickly. So it's about having coping, mitigating strategies, having a plan, but you know that the plan is going to change, right? So I think concentrating and having a good understanding of the risk profile and mitigation strategies is a key thing to do, particularly in places, in instances like you said, without maybe as good as an existing track record in others. When you're doing first of a kind, you need to try to understand that mitigation strategy even more.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking of FOAK, first of a kind project, there was this paper from Gale. I mean, Mission Political Partnership, where Gale works at, right? I saw the document around the industrial hubs in Texas and California, right? So I think they had some lessons learned on that. No, no, does Radical have any addition to that question? I know you're the investor, yeah, so probably you can have some insight for people considering projects.
I think, like I mentioned in my presentation, it is all about reducing risk. There is risk. So I think, Ignacio, you and I share that similar opinion on risk. There's risk in everything. The idea is, how do you mitigate it? How do you reduce the risk of failure? And so, from an investment standpoint, it's how you're going to demonstrate through your project that it's not just a project that you're developing that is a novel thing just for today, but how is it going to be improving and evolving through time? And that continuous innovation is going to be incredibly important from a product development perspective. And then, with these products, what's the demand for that, right? I mean, if you're just developing the product at the end of the day and nobody's going to adopt it, well, it's going to be just an interesting idea at that point. So you want to try to commercialize that and say, well, who's going to want to buy this product? Because otherwise you're just doing a project for the sake of doing a project. And certainly I don't want to deter anybody from that innovation path to say it's not worthy of doing any project, even just to test things out. We've done a lot of that in our venture lab. So, I understand developing something to test something out and to see what the limits are, for example, for a particular technology. But if you're going to want to build a business out of what you're doing from developing that product, then you want to think about customer adoption. You want to think about how you're going to go to market. You want to think about how the demand for that, what you're developing in terms of a solution, is going to stand the test of time. It is probably going to evolve, not unsurprisingly, because markets are dynamic. The customer landscape is dynamic. So everything is dynamic, but in preparing for that future, you're going to definitely need to show how you're going to reduce risk of failure as you're going to, deploy in the market.
Thank you very much. I mean, I agree with you. There was one submission we made recently. I think the first thing that was requested for was offtake agreements, right? So they always want to see the demand side of things regarding projects, right? So just staying with you, Radhika. So this question states, as we scale digital infrastructure, how do we embed cybersecurity, privacy, and ethical AI into our sustainability frameworks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we already know that digital tools are getting more rampant across various areas. And I mean, energy is very, very vital for so
Yes.
many people. So, how do we ensure these systems are not compromised or tampered with?
Sure.
Yeah.
Great question, and super important to think about. Well, we're very big proponents of blockchain as a core. The whole purpose of Web3 based or decentralized technologies is to make it tamper-proof. It is to make it sort of immutable. Those who might know anything about blockchain as a technology, and if you don't, I recommend you to read articles and certainly read our book if you're so inclined. We've got particular chapters that are applicable to the power and energy sector. But really, what you want to think about is having a blockchain core that offers immutability, so nobody can manipulate the data. It offers high security, because when you have decentralized ownership. So the difference between distributed and decentralized, I'll just say, is distributed is when you're just distributing it in different locations. You're distributing the data, but you're still probably having one single owner of that data. When you're having truly decentralized architectures, you're having multiple owners of that data. So think if a particular node in a network is compromised, the other nodes can kind of quickly take over, and you're not compromising the entire system as a whole. So you really want to think about use of something like blockchain technology to preserve things like privacy and security. These are very, very sturdy sort of infrastructure and systems that can actually offer a great deal of three things, which is security, compliance, and privacy. Many of the centralized systems are built on, well, the internet technology, and internet technology is based on TCP/IP protocol, which is really a communications protocol. It wasn't designed for anything else. But blockchain as a technology, Web3 based decentralized technologies, were designed for greater security, were designed for greater privacy and certain compliance. So these are areas that I think are incredibly relevant to building any digital infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Radhika. Just to on that question, I don't know if Ignacio has anything to say, because I know some companies might have issues regarding having their data publicly available, right? So I know there was a time when Shell was trying to do something on blockchain, but after a while, I didn't hear much about that, right? So, but I know there are issues about having data public, right? So I don't know, what do you think have been done? I know there's private blockchain, but still, I don't know, what are your insights regarding that?
So two things come to mind, right? First, what a large company, you talk about Shell, might be doing or not is one thing. What you're going to hear is a part of what they're doing. They're always going to be doing a lot of stuff, and they're going to be trying a lot of stuff. They have the capability of integrating expertise inside their company or buying the best partnership expertise. That doesn't guarantee best thing, but what I mean is they have a lot more options. What I would say is for those who are either small because they're starting as startups or the like, or just there's a small business, it's impossible to be expert in everything, right? So you have to have your own core expertise. And then there is a lot of organizations, there is a lot of institutes and others that can help you get the right best practices in those areas that are not part of your core expertise. You don't need to go and hire an expert in all fields. There is, in some areas, like the same thing as Radhika was showing in funding, is the same thing for access to all kinds of technical expertise. Some areas there is a lot more. In some areas, there is not as much. Fortunately, in digital, anything that is digital, you can access expertise in a lot of the world. You're much less geography constrained than in other areas. So I'd say look for partnerships, look for others that are core experts at that, and try to use that best practice. You're not going to get it right all the time, but instead of trying to build your own, I really believe in not reinventing wheels and try to understand what works and using that. And I think this is an area that is quite important to do. And don't believe the hype, don't believe the headlines. Large companies, others, it's part of, sometimes there is trying to distract others with what you're doing and not doing. And large companies are particularly good at doing that, right? Because they have to play against others, or they have to compete against others. So there's always not knowing what's really there.
Okay. Thank you, Ignacy. Right. So just staying with you, this is more about the sustainability side of projects, right? And I know you touched on that regarding data centers. So, I mean, right now, data centers are contributing 1.5% of emissions to I mean, global landscape, and is increasing rapidly, right? And so, what do you think regarding certifications of projects? Are they essential enough to measure sustainability? And what kind of energy technologies do you think should be used to build data centers of the future? Because I think there's no stopping building of data centers. They'll keep on expanding in decades to come, right? So, which energy source do you recommend regarding construction of those facilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Two or three thoughts there. I'm a chemical engineer, right? So as a chemical engineer, we've dealt with the difficulty of scaling up new technologies because it's the how things work at small scale, starting in the lab to then in a pilot plant to then in a commercial is quite different. And it's not just a matter of making the same thing bigger and it's going to work. It's not a linear scale up. It's more complex and complicated than that. I think the physical side of the digital is going through a similar a transformation in which that scale up of the physical assets to support the digital infrastructure is hitting an inflection point in which doing more of the same is not just realistic. It's just too much. There was a conversation, it was on the news about a couple months ago in which there was a bit of a back and forth. I think it was between one of the AI companies and Samsung about some of the demands of the AI companies, as in how much data centers are needed, was totally unrealistic. It's like, yeah, this is not something, this linear scale up, just adding capacity is not realistic. It has to be more about making it different. So I think it's not just about building more data centers of same and putting more energy. The energy efficiency of the data centers, particularly, and I'll make a disclosure here because it's a partial conflict of interest. So the cooling cooling is one of the large energy requirements of data centers. It's not just about running the computers; it's about running them cool enough. I have to disclose, Refinity is a subsidiary of Inventure, and Inventure has another company in its portfolio called Excelsius that is in the data center cooling business. So I'm not totally a neutral party to this, but I think understanding these new cooling technologies, these new ways to address is important. It's about data, it's about energy generation, it's about cooling, it's about understanding those characteristics. And I would say beyond that, finding the right connectivity between a data center and other users and generators of electricity is important. So I think we haven't been, particularly good at connecting assets of different industries of different characteristics to take advantage of when one needs and what the other does, right? So, for example, we talk about data centers and nuclear. Well, data center energy demand is not necessarily a flat out. It depends on what is being done. Well, nuclear needs to run flat out. So how we can combine those different assets so that there is a better connectivity is a better ways to do it. I think those are important, finding those externalities, both in the positive and negative, for the different assets and how to combine things. Rapidly, this becomes billions and billions and very large things. So it becomes large projects, and that's a very different world and very difficult world. So I believe a lot of the headlines you see on data centers, on energy generation, are going to end up just as headlines, as most of the large projects that gets announced never get built. And that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It's just, it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier to put a headline announcing the investment of billions of dollars than to actually get those projects to completion. So that's a bit of an insight.
Okay. Thank you, Ignacio. I mean, recently the International Energy Agency, they released like a global tracker for AI and energy assets around the globe, right? And I think one thing they're trying to track is energy source for AI infrastructure. And I mean, just like, I mean, you talk about the headlines, the one from the Middle East. I think that was like the very, very big one. A lot of US companies, India, Nvidia, right? Trying to build, I think 5 gigawatts in Saudi Arabia data centers, right? So, I mean, people are concerned that, okay, is it just going to be possible powering this kind of infrastructure? Because that's very massive. And I think the argument is that I mean, AI centers are built on large energy profiles, right? So if they have the energy source, people just believe that they will just use the fossil to power such infrastructure. So I guess there are some questions around the kind of tools that we use on such projects, right? But I think, I mean, just like you said, we wait and see what happens. We'll believe that it goes on in a very sustainable fashion. I think Radical wants to say something on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think energy consumption is something that we think about a lot. If you think about any of these advanced technologies, I mean, blockchain, I think, has actually turned out much, much better in the long haul, since some of the basic infrastructure. I mean, Bitcoin certainly has a lot of energy consumptive sort of profiles, but Ethereum has come a long way now and is very energy efficient. So thankfully, there are some progresses. The same thing goes for AI. I think, we've really got to think about more sustainable ways of doing the kinds of things that we can do. And, interestingly enough, maybe AI can actually help, in the efficient management of these assets. I think that's really where you might be able to mitigate some of that energy consumption in compute power. But all of these technologies just, we've got to think about things for future proofing that energy footprint. That's not something that is easy to do. Everything is power hungry at the moment, and it's unsustainable in that power hungriness. We're going to be depleting resources very, very quickly. So to Ignacio's point, I think thinking about alternative sources of energy, how do we distribute this in a different way? How do you use decentralized, even peer-to-peer systems, even as you're translating across different asset categories, thinking about peer-to-peer systems and thinking about how people can actually become sort of mini energy grids on their own. I mean, this is a way, we often talk about this, we discuss this extensively in our book, which is, how do you take advantage of peer-to-peer systems where consumers can become prosumers, or centers can contribute back to the grid? So these are ways that I think the power consumption is there, but if we can more intelligently develop decentralized types of systems that can empower individuals or communities to start contributing back to the energy grid, I think that's a much more sustainable path. So there's a lot to do in this arena. The opportunities are there, and so to any of you that are looking at projects, think about those kinds of projects that are going to be very difficult and challenging, but therein lies the ingenuity. So for people that are in this conference or are watching it afterward, think about maybe leveraging some of your own backgrounds and interests to really solving some of these bigger problems. And I'll tell you that when you can solve the energy problem, everybody wins. So I think it's not something easy, not trivial, but it is something where we need innovation, we need ingenuity, and we need everyone to participate in the creation of these innovative solutions. So I would say entrepreneurs are very much part of this conversation. As investors, definitely we're looking at the next generation of entrepreneurs that are willing to tackle these very, very large problems. But also, to Ignacio's point, when you're thinking about large corporations, people that are looking at innovative ways of doing things and have to partner with others, it's going to be this ecosystem that we're going to create around this. We can't get away from the power hungry structures that we have. We do need them, and we're seeing that proliferate. So we're going to have to think about more intelligent management and more empowerment in this ecosystem so that we can actually not just consume, but also contribute back to the grids.
Thank you very much. I think we'll be wrapping up now. Just the last one for you, Radhika. So, when it comes to digital tools, right? I mean, I've seen people talk about it here that, oh, I mean, investors just want something digital just because it's very fancy. I mean, so someone said, okay, for instance, for farmers who are on their farmland, like they wonder, like, how does this tool actually like improve their work on site? That maybe just like the hype around it is just the investors trying to move into markets. So you see digital tools for farming, digital tools for climate and the like, right? So I just want you to clarify something regarding that. You know, people always see it as just people jumping on hype regarding when it comes to sectors and the likes, right? So just one word, I mean, or one sentence or two regarding digital tools just being an hype.
You know, hype cycles always exist in the advent of any new technology. So this is not something we need to be afraid of. We do need to think about adoption curves. You know, past a hype cycle, it no longer becomes hyped. You know, from an investment perspective, we think that, you know, the best basically weather the storms. Initially, there are going to be hype cycles. There was hype cycles around the internet. And eventually we got past the hype cycle of the internet and it became something that was ubiquitously used. Same thing goes for, you know, any of the new waves of technologies that they're seeing. Even mobile technology was a hype at some point, right? And so the nature of emerging technologies kind of necessitates a hype cycle, unfortunately. And it's really the shiny new object, right? That's the syndrome. Is you see a shiny new object, it's a shiny new technology. Everybody wants to get in on the action. There's a lot of excitement around it, and that causes that frothiness and hype. At the end of the day, you know, we always, from at least from an investor perspective, I know that I look at that and I go, well, it's not about the hype, it's about the underlying technology. Is there something fundamentally valuable that you're working on, that the big problems that you're trying to tackle? Those are, I think, really important regardless. And those are going to be the ones that are going to transcend the hype cycles and get out of those tricycles. If you're doing something that is really so critically important, and this again comes back to the must-haves rather than the nice to have, right? You might have heard those terms. Don't develop something that's just nice to have, because that's not going to sustain in the long term, right? When you're really developing a sustainable project for the longevity, you're really wanting to tackle things that are A, non-trivial, B, big problems that are pervasive problems that you're trying to solve. And those will transcend the hype cycles. So I think that's really the takeaway that I have.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So finally, for this panel, I will have Ignazi. So this final question about the energy of the future, right? So I know you touched on nuclear. There's a lot of safety concerns around nuclear, right? And I mean, the whole Israel-Iran war, right? And even for countries like Nigeria, I don't think we have anything on nuclear, and although we have a plan, right? So, but I think safety plays a very, very crucial role in these kind of things. And even the same with hydrogen, there are also safety issues around hydrogen in terms of the combustibility and the like. So, and Radhika talked about the need for innovation, right? We need entrepreneurs that would go into this area and bring down energy costs and ensure it's much more affordable for everyone. So what do you see around safety for all these new systems? And what do you think we have to put in place before we can deploy these new technologies at scale?
I mean, it's undeniable, right? And trying to downplay security concerns around nuclear is doing a disservice to even the expansion of nuclear, right? It has to be done right. It has to be addressed properly. There's a track record, and the track record is very good on uses of, and I'm talking about civilian power generation. I'm not talking about military applications. You know, when you're going around plutonium, the things change, right? The safety aspects of this newer generation of reactors, whether it be at the larger scale or a smaller small modular reactors is much better. There's inherently safe by design, and there's been a lot of enhancements to them. So I would say on operationally, it's quite addressed. There is still the issue of spent fuel and what to do with that. People are working. There is a minimizing of it, but there is a real concern. What do we do? End of life concerns are available in any industry in any way. There's no ways escaping second law of thermodynamics. And the other thing that I was going to bring up on nuclear very quickly, and I made a reference to it. It also connects to the project development that we talked about before, is where nuclear has a very negative track record is about cost and time overruns on their projects. I read a very interesting book in the last year. It's a couple of years old book by a Danish professor on Oxford called How Big Things Get Done. It's about large projects, and this guy and his students have a database of large projects and classified large projects, cost and time overruns. And they found that two kinds of projects have the worst track record in terms of over budget and over time: nuclear power plants and the Olympics. So those type of projects have had something behind them. And I would advise all of you guys, How Big Things Get Done is a very interesting, is a quick read on large projects, and it was a lot of insight. So I'll leave that. There is a project and there is a commercial questions about nuclear projects that needs to be resolved. Some people say, well, regulatory this and that. Well, the same thing happens in China. China knows how to play regulations just right when they have a strategic initiative, and nuclear power plants have very similar delays and cost overruns in there. So it's something beyond just strict regulation that we need to resolve. So I would say we still need how to do it properly from a project perspective. And I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Ignacio and Radhika. It's so great, I mean, having this discussion with you, and I really hope people have learned one or two things from what you've said. I mean, definitely the digital future is here, and we have to power it with energy. All right. And I think innovation is something that keeps on evolving, and we have to keep on making it better. Once again, I'm grateful having you join us today. Chemotronix is also great, and I'm very sure people that are watching this session after will gain a lot from what you've said today. So thank you very much, and over to Victor.
All right. Thank you so much once again to our panelists. I just wanted to, I know we are almost on time there. I was just sitting behind the scenes, watching and enjoying the session and insightful conversation myself. So I would like to just, allow for questions, so that, because I know, there are eager folks who are, waiting to ask one or two questions. And I'll also check through the chat. So if at you want to type in your question on the chat. Hey. All right. So while that is being taken, I'm just going to run a quick poll, because I was also, enjoying the session myself, and I have, some sort of poll on the future outlook as well. We've had conversations centered around, digital technologies, AI. Radhika herself has also talked about, blockchain and how the solutions are integral to achieving net zero emissions. So while we still wait for questions, I'll just quickly launch a quick poll, just to, know some sort of stance of where we are in terms of, the audience. So you can just participate in the poll. If you want to still ask questions, I'll still leave, some 1 minute room for questions before we wrap up. Okay, so the poll is live now. So you have some time to actually check it out and, just pick your preferred. Okay, by the way, the recording, like we have a recording. So for folks who joined us late, because I saw some other folks were, joining in while the session is, was already on. So the recording will be made available. This is also live streamed on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel. So there are folks who are watching via YouTube as well. So after the session, that would also still be made available to you to ingest. With that said, I will still give like 1 more minute for folks who are the poll still keeps increasing. So I'll just give 1 more minute for folks who are still deciding on what option to choose from. I think I'm gonna just cut it off from here. So I'll just end the poll now. Really interesting insights. I would like to share the results too. Okay, so let me just share the results real quickly. So there were just about 3 questions there. One, of course, I think maybe because of the session, and Radical has done much justice to pioneering the fact that AI can actually play much in achieving net zero. So I think there's much more tendency towards that line right now. So for question 2 as well, we see by 2030, do you think digital solutions will be integral to achieving net zero emissions? Yeah, so there's still that dicey, situation there. Some folks think, it should play a supportive role, while there are still, strong folks who are bullish on, digital solutions being a key factor. And yeah, I would say like there are no in quote unquote, correct answers to this. I see the third question there, which is the last one. Which of the following would most encourage you to adopt more digital solutions for sustainability? More folks are tending towards lower technology cost, which of course is understandable due to some of the challenges, especially if you are from the regions around Africa where technology is somewhat expensive. And some other folks are tending towards the play there between government incentives and availability of user-friendly tools. Okay. So I would say, yeah, very, very interesting insights, and it's great to see that diversity of thought and breakdown. And thank you so much once again. I'll just stop sharing the poll, and I would like to say a big thank you once again to our speakers, and for coming around and honoring the invitation. Okay, just as I wrap up, I would like to just show as well. Okay, let me put this on slideshow. So you can do well to follow us on social media as well. So we're available on LinkedIn. We're available on Twitter as well. Let me ensure this is shared. 1 second. Okay. Yes, you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter as well. We use the same handle, which is at Chemotronix. So you please feel free to like, follow, save, comment and share on each and every of our posts. Earlier on, Chemotronix as well, was introduced, and what we do essentially is building digital solutions to drive the future of net zero emissions. And of course, you can do well to check out our platform at www.chemotronix.org. We have a marketplace which you could check out that we're currently developing for carbon projects. And we also have a carbon calculator as well for folks who from time to time, calculate their emissions for offsetting, among several other things. I would also strongly encourage that you subscribe to our newsletter. So you can find, the subscription page on our website. It's right there on the landing page. All you need to do is fill in your email, and then you could just submit. We give weekly, bi-weekly updates as well, and you can do well to follow up on subsequent events like this as well. All right. So thank you so much once again. I would like to, just say a big thank you to all our audience for, coming around, for participating, and we hope to see you in subsequent sessions. Thank you once again, and let's build a sustainable future together. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye, Radhika. Bye,
Bye.
Ignacio.
Bye, peace.
Bye.
Good to see you both.
All right.